This is Walk Talk Football, the show where we talk about everything that's on your mind. So over the last year, we have covered U.S. soccer extensively, from Pat going down to Trinidad and Tobago to watch the U.S. crash out of the World Cup, all the way to these USSF presidential elections. This week, we will be releasing interviews with 4 of the candidates: Mike Winograd, Kyle Martino, Eric Winalda, and Kathy Carter. The other 4 candidates were unavailable. The responses from each of the candidates went a little bit long, so this week on our Twitter account, we're going to release those full responses on certain topics starting Tuesday with Pro Rel, Wednesday Youth Development, Thursday is the women's game, and Friday we are talking about transparency within U.S. soccer. And guess what, guys? We were able to get some of those questions from our favorite influencers from within the game, from Alexi Lawless to Neil Blackman, American Outlaws, Dennis Crowley, Crystal Dunn, and much, much more. So let's walk. So first question is, do you think that we emphasize winning too much at the youth level? And if yes, how do we ensure development is a priority at the younger ages?
You knew I was going to say yes. Yes, we absolutely make it about winning at a young age. And you know what that does? It takes the fun out of it.
One of the things that happens to have a massive influence on this is the coaching. The coaching is where that winning attitude comes from, because the coaches are being paid, so they feel that they have to deliver. Now that's the problem.
I think that's part of the culture, is for coaches to promote their wins and their losses as opposed to promoting the players that they've developed.
For a coach, the answer is absolutely not. Way too much of an emphasis on winning. We need to focus on player development and helping players get better. For kids, we want to nurture and cultivate their natural competitiveness.
It's not necessarily about winning or losing, it's about an understanding of the game and understanding the coach's function. Because if I had it my way, I wouldn't even call them a coach. I would say, under the age of 10, your job is to facilitate a game.
Development is about wanting to be on the field, falling in love with the game, and having time to grow as an individual. And then as you get older, and the way we grew up, you start getting into winning, you start getting into coaching, you start getting into formations and all the nuance and the cognitive side of the game.
Next question is from Dennis Crowley, founder of Foursquare, owner of Kingston Stockade,
Nice.
and PSL. And he says, what role should USSF play in guiding the NCAA towards policies that will help the growth and development of college players?
It's an interesting distinction, right? Guiding versus working with the NCAA. The U.S. soccer, we don't have the ability to tell the NCAA anything.
Here's the thing is, we don't have jurisdiction over that, right? NCAA runs college, but what we can do is help understand that it's a vital part of development.
There's 50,000 players today that play college soccer, and that's not an insignificant number of athletes. Those are our future fans, and they're our future coaches and administrators and the like. So I think from where I sit, I look at it and say we should be participating in some way.
There are things to make it viable that we need the NCAA to do. We need them to get over to a full year schedule, for example. But again, those are discussions taking into consideration the NCAA's mission and working with them and making sure they understand our views and just getting them to give them due consideration.
When you're dealing with the NC2A and you want to extend the season, or you want to at least have a spring and then and a fall, is that sets a bad precedent, and what will end up happening is the NC2A will get a bunch of letters from every other sport saying, well, what about us? If you change it for them, you got to change it for us.
I think we can help extend their season. I think there are ways to have competitive college games afterwards. I've met with Sasha, I've met with George Galnavach, and these colleges are already meeting to come up with ways to make it competitive for the ones that don't go away for national team or don't go away for these other tournaments. So it is year long. And U.S. soccer should collaborate in the strategy there, for sure.
Do you think U.S. soccer is being held back at all by MLS being somewhat reluctant to sell players abroad? And do you think that there needs to be a shift in how the league approaches selling players?
Absolutely. That's one of the massive reasons why we've hit a snag here. We're stagnating because at the professional level, and you and I both know this, but nobody wants to talk about it, that there is no light at the end of the tunnel for some of our young players.
I think that's changing a little bit. I mean, as we're seeing an influx, I think my bigger issue today is I'd like to see us have a bigger emphasis on the American player. For me, as president of U.S. Soccer, I want to see more American players get more opportunity. I do have little concern with the advent of TAM. It's bringing a lot of international players into the league, and perhaps actually making it harder for Americans to find their spots in the starting 11.
The rest of the world sees our potential, but we haven't figured out how to harness it.
We can't expect to catch up right away. Eventually, we have to be able to offer a commensurate development program here to what you have over in Europe. But let's just not not be insecure about that and have a chip on our shoulder about it and say, listen, we still develop great players.
Thomas Floyd, senior editor of Goal.com, asks, do you believe ProRel fosters a better or worse environment for player development? And as U.S. Soccer president, would you feel like it's your place to push MLS owners one way or the other on the topic?
Promotion and relegation is a necessity. And if anybody that tells you otherwise is just happy with mediocrity.
I think there are very few things that would be as exciting for the fan as ProRel. I think ProRel would help certainly several players, but the fact of the matter is to make it practical. What we need to do right now is focus on closing the gap between the lower divisions and MLS.
As a fan, I like it, but it's actually not the role of the president of U.S. Soccer to determine promotion and relegation. I would look at it more about, I think we've got to look at sustainability for our professional teams in all of our leagues.
If you're going to make a more competitive platform for our players, promotion and relegation needs to be a part of the way we do things.
It's impossible to make an argument that a closed system develops players better than having an open system.
All of our games need to matter. All of the games matter in Europe because they're always fighting for something. It builds drama. People want to see that.
You don't have a Jamie Vardy without an open system. And you also don't have a 5,000-to-1 Cinderella story. That's one of the greatest sports stories of all time, of Leicester winning that.
All that being said, creating that theater is great, but the bottom line is we have a soccer problem right now. Everyone's trying to figure it out, and we're not creating the best competitive environment for our players. Promotion and relegation does just that.
In our country, it's difficult to identify talent at lower levels. If you have a meritocracy, you have the opportunity to get up on the big stage, but you also have clubs that are shopping in lower leagues to strengthen their teams.
Donald Wine, who's a board member of American Outlaws, wants to know, how will the new president allow fans to be more involved and have a say in the workings of U.S. soccer? Currently, they have only 2 votes in an election that could have thousands, but in number of fan members, they have tens of thousands.
Any critical decisions need to be made through an inclusive, merit-based, and transparent process. That includes the fans.
From the Federation's standpoint, they have done virtually nothing to connect with the adult faction of their membership.
We need to involve them in decisions. We need to bring them in. We need to make the game more accessible to them. I've talked about ticket prices, and I'll be clear, they're going to get cut. They're going to get cut significantly because we want fans who are most passionate and committed to the team there, creating that atmosphere.
Federation right now, through a registration process, essentially takes $2 for every registration of a player that's trying to become a member, a part of this adult faction, right?
They need a voice. They need to help elect the next president.
That money goes to the Federation when it really should stay in the hands of the people who are helping facilitate games, line fields, make sure that soccer happens in this country.
We need to achieve success as a collective. It's not something that's driven by one individual that we are going to elect on February 10th. It's going to be about how do we bring everybody together.
And do you think the U.S. national team needs to establish, at least the men's team, needs to establish a style of play considering the diversity and size of the country?
Well, I think because of the diversity and the size of the country, it's hard to establish one style of play.
For me, it's actually, let's start with culture. For me, no one should participate without a burning desire once that crest hits their chest.
Having a philosophy and having a one way of playing is probably never going to work. But what happens with us, and what we unfortunately do, and we still do it, is we hire a coach who's going to teach us how to play his way.
My dad has this saying, if you can't fix it, feature it. We can't fix the fact that we are the size of Europe. We can't fix the fact that we have so many different ways to develop a player, so many different groups and so many different backgrounds, but that's what makes us a beautiful country.
What needs to happen is the players need to stay true to themselves, and we need to find coaches who understand how to manage the team that they have, not turn them into something that they're not.
Do you think it's crucial that the U.S. soccer president be present regularly at both the men's and the women's camps?
Well, I certainly believe in equality. Let me start there.
The president is the face of U.S. soccer, and the men's and women's camps are important. And they need, by the way, to be equally as important, right? We need to make sure that there's media coverage of both. We need to make sure that we're putting out press releases and marketing them to the extent we can.
Ultimately, I think that we're not hiring a general manager. We're not electing a technical director. We are electing a president whose role it is to set the vision.
I think the presence of a president adds a little bit of importance to something and dignity, and I think the president should be at both camps. Whether it's every single camp all the time is, a matter of logistics and something to discuss.
My take is, of course, we need to be present. Of course, we need to have a better relationship. And, for the members that play for the team currently or maybe in the past, they understand that relationship with the Federation has never really been a good one.
They need to be at different games. They need to be at different matches. They need to represent the country. All of our national teams throughout the year, they need to have some presence. I don't think it's a requirement that we have somebody that's at camp and managing what's happening on the field of play. Actually, I don't think that's what we're electing.
We need to once again show that we're going to lead the way by paying our women's national team players the same we pay our men's national team players. And by the way, other countries have already started that initiative, so we're late to that one. We should hurry up and be a front runner to make sure that we say national team players are national team players and it's not gender specific.
As the Federation, I would want nothing more than the next time that the women win, and they will win, that those hugs are real. Yeah. You know when you get a fake hug?
Yeah.
That's nothing worse than a fake hug.
It's the ass out hug.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. I know you've been trying to really, make my life miserable, but I'm gonna hug you anyway.
What is a specific example of something that you would make more transparent within the game that isn't necessarily as transparent as you'd like at this point?
Gosh, that's a difficult question to answer. I think what I would say is I'm big on communication. I actually think we have a lot of transparency. I think we have poor communication.
I think we should know who our business partners are and why the deal is good for us.
Transparency is critical. It engenders confidence, it engenders trust, and it makes sure that there's integrity.
There are a lot of things about the opacity of U.S. soccer that are detrimental, even if it's just creating perceived conflict of interest. But the fact of the matter is, if it's good for us, if it grows the game, then tell us why.
What I've heard from members is they'd like to see more around meeting minutes and things like that. Well, so be it. Let's make sure that they can see those things.
There needs to be a committee of governance inside.
The more you make decisions behind closed doors with a small group of people, the less transparency there is. The more you involve people in the decision-making process, the more transparency you're going to have.
And we need more people in Soccer House, that's for sure.
What is your kind of take on the MP and Silva's $4 billion proposal for the D1, D2, D3 kind of media rights across the board in the United States? Have you read much up on that proposal?
Well, I've seen some of the articles, and obviously I did work previously at Soccer United Marketing, but ultimately, while I think it was a big splash in the media, there was no way to have a conversation because Major League Soccer had a rights negotiation, have a rights deal that they're not in a position to actually entertain a conversation.
U.S. soccer controls its own media rights. We can decide at the end of the day, and we have to decide, it's our fiduciary duty, to decide what is in the best interest of U.S. soccer. We need to make sure that decision is made conflict-free, based on an informed decision.
The timing was just wrong. That's all that really comes down to. There is a deal in place that's going to take us to 2022. I know this because I've been involved in television. I know this because it's a relationship with Fox, my former employer. But the truth is that what all that represents is how much money people want to put into our system.
It's an exciting idea, but whether or not that's possible or helpful, I mean, that can be debated.
It's an appetite for the game. Of course, there's an opportunity, but this is something that needs to be entertained in the future.
We should have these debates, and that means everyone cares. We should disagree. We got to be able to disagree again. In the promotion relegation conversation, it shouldn't be so charged.
When the time is right for MLS to open up its media negotiations, I'm sure we'll hear more about it. I would love to see us get more money into the game, obviously, the ability to reinvest some of those dollars into creating greater opportunities for kids and greater chances for them to play. That'd be great. Do I think that's necessarily the avenue? Who knows? We'll see when time comes when those rights deals are up for and available for discussion. discussion.
On the subject of player development, do you think MLS should institute a rule like Liga MX has where a certain amount of minutes must be played by young Americans or Canadians of a certain age?
No, I don't. I think they got to earn it. Anybody that's going to play has got to earn their right to play.
It's tough to mandate that there needs to be a certain amount of young players on the field, because one thing that can happen is it ceases to be a meritocracy.
I think it's things we should look at, because clearly we've got an opportunity to continue to develop at that elite level our professional athletes, and I think it's something we do need to make sure that the American player is getting time.
With respect to our interests, of course it helps. You know, you look at countries that don't do it and have gotten away where, you know, England's a great example, where you have so few opportunities for English players to play in the Premier League. It absolutely hurts their national team.
If you have a starting position and it's because of your age, I'm not sure if that's good for the development of a player. But if young players aren't getting enough opportunities, you have to find a mechanism to make that possible.
We need players getting minutes in key roles in big games, in competitive atmospheres. And if that means opening up, you know, the leagues to give more opportunities to young Americans, that's going to help U.S. soccer.